interview, this time with Max Lord. He's running for city council. And hey, Max, glad you could make it tonight. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. So, hey, what's your story? Where are you from? How long you been in Boulder? What do you do, and what do you know?
I guess I'm from upstate New York, the kind of western side at the northern tip of Appalachia. Don't know how familiar people are with that. I've lived in Boulder for now 15 years, I guess, officially 15 years as of now. Um, I went to CU. I worked for the campus physics department for a while. Worked for NCAR for a bit, but I've worked at a lot of places around town.
Are you a
Um,
physicist?
No, I mean, well, I studied physics in college. I worked for the physics department for several years,
Wow.
actually doing facilities work, so more in line with what I do now. Although it was like lab maintenance, and that, I mean, that even that kind of informed a lot of what I do now because it was a lot of communicating between contractors and scientists, right?
So you're a contractor. Are you a builder? You build homes and things, or what do you do?
Yeah, nowadays I'm a builder, so I did a I've had a lot of wild jobs, but the I started my company 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and I build things around town. So I work mostly residential construction, but lately, in the past couple years, I guess 2 years or so, I've been working more for the small businesses in town.
Oh yeah. So, are you staying busy? How are things?
Yeah, yeah, I feel busy.
Okay. So let's see. Are you
Yeah.
are you married? You have kids? You have a cat, a dog?
No, single, very single. Um, no kids, no cat, no dog.
No pets. Okay.
Um,
You have a
yeah.
pickup?
I a pickup truck?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I my Ranger just well, my last Ranger got stolen in front of my house. I live yeah, in Boulder, and then so that was unfortunate. And then I bought a little one for just to kind of get me through because I needed a truck like right then. But
Yeah.
I'm getting a bigger truck now, which is kind of unfortunate and makes me sad. But I think I just got to that point.
All right. So listen. So you're running for city council. Why are you running? I read a little bit about you. So you're kind of an interesting person. One of the things you talked about infrastructure. So what would you do as in relationship to infrastructure in the city of Boulder?
Well, I mean, infrastructure is a big word, right? Not it's not small, nor are the city's ambitions. One thing I like to talk about is the demolition over on Alpine Balsam. That's a massive civil infrastructure project, right? Uh,
For the old hospital?
yeah, exactly where the old hospital was. And it's an important project. I guess to start somewhere else, I'm a kind of vocal critic of a
Mhm.
lot of the infrastructure projects right now. And I really just think that there needs to be a bit more pragmatic leadership around them. Some of them are just hemorrhaging money. And I think that as we are dealing with increasing economic uncertainty in the region, the city needs to dial back expenditures on some of these projects and make more practical decisions, because that's where a lot of the budget goes.
Wow. Oh, really? So they're spending money when they don't need to, or are they mismanaging projects?
I both, so in on one sense, it's like, okay, well, we need the city offices and we're able to sell off some land assets, and that might be a good thing, right? And at the same time, we can handle a flood mitigation plan. These are all good things, we want to be able to protect from floods in that region. But at the same time, something I like to tell people is the CCRS tax that's going to be on the new ballot measure, and I highly recommend everybody vote for it. I think,
What does CCRS stand for?
oh, community resilient. Oh man, wow, I'm going to blank on this one. I'd have to,
It's another tax for something else, and it's important.
yeah.
All right, let me
It's a
ask
point
you
three
about.
percent sales tax. I mean, I can tell you about 10% of it goes to local nonprofits. A lot of it's resiliency. It already exists. The measure is to extend it, and it has wide sweeping support both amongst the public and the council.
We have redundancy in the city of Boulder. I mean, like I just read that we have 31 public information officers. Happens to be my field. What do we need 31 public information officers for? two or three will do it.
Well, I mean, public information officer, like that's not a statistic I'm entirely familiar with, or where you're
It's okay. They
drawing.
send out press releases. They are flax. They're like they're like the dancers. You know, when you go to a football game, you have the cheerleaders, and then behind them you have the dancers. So public
Yeah.
PIOs are. I'm making a joke. It's okay.
Yeah. So the CCRS is community culture and resilience, by the way. But all that I'm saying is it is on the ballot, and that it's represents about $15 million more for the city for necessary projects. Most people support it. They spent $16 million on the demolition of the Alpine Balsam Hospital.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of
I would
money.
have torn it down for like 1.5 million.
You know what? I think as a team we might have been able to pull that off. that's
So
that's
another, you said you don't like the way land use management's going on in Boulder. What's up with that?
yeah. I mean that's really the fundamental of my campaign, and it's a rabbit hole to go down Title IX. I actually was fortunate enough to have lunch with Matt Benjamin today and just chat about it. And everybody I talk to has a different perspective on it, and it's just layered and complicated and broken, and it makes
Well, what's
doing
wrong?
business.
What happens? Is it, I mean, are you talking about like building permits? What is this land management? I don't understand it. What is that?
Yeah, that's more of what I'm talking about. I'm not so much talking about like OSMP and what they're doing over there. I'm more specifically talking land usage, which falls under like Title IX. So if you wanna flip the retail space on, the vacant retail space around town into something different, you're going to go through planning department, and all that's going to fall back to land use regulations. And a lot of our land use regulations are esoteric. Some of them are based on like bigoted 100-year-old laws, and we've been layering on them, layering on them, layering on them for decades on top of decades on top of decades. And it makes it nearly impossible to understand what people can and cannot do. So let's say we wanted to streamline permits for switching office space into residential. What it would actually take to streamline that is pretty complicated, and it would tie up staff for years
Oh
just
my,
to just to change it so that we could allow people to build more effectively within our principles.
you're not the first person I've talked to in the building world that just looks at the city of Boulder and their eyes cross when when they talk about permits for anything.
Anything and everything. And honestly, we're to the point where I don't even think that the land use policy effectively represents the council's nor the general population's views on how land should be managed or regulated. And we're right in the face of, a WUI update, so wilderness urban interface update. So think the fires, all that's going to change. And we already have an overhaul there. There's huge areas that we're trying to rebuild. And there comes a point where rather than untangle the knot of yarn, that it just becomes easier to start fresh. And I
It's,
think that
yeah, no, listen, the city just put in a bunch of cows to eat grass to do fire mitigation, and you had some thoughts on that, right? On fire prevention.
yeah, how did you? Oh, well, that's funny. I know Grandma Grass did that. I don't know if you heard about that. Were you? Like maybe you saw me talk to Haley about it. But
I
yeah,
read
no,
about,
that's
yeah.
that's great. No, I love that. That's an awesome solution, right?
Mm.
You've got the cattle have been shown to better manage than just flat out mowing because the
Yeah.
way that they trample the earth. You've got a local agricultural group that's doing sustainable and holistic agriculture, and are also outspoken advocates for progressive and sustainable
Well, the
agriculture.
reason
There,
we had the Marshall Fire is that grass was high and the wind started 100 miles an hour and just burned Marshall to the ground within 3 hours. And that was poor wildland management is what happened there. And nobody's saying it, but I am.
I think people are saying it. Um, yeah, and the thing is when we look at the more like the NCAR fire,
Yeah.
a lot of the reasons why that didn't spread is there was effective land management surrounding it. It wasn't nearly as windy of a day, and I was there for both of them. But
Let's go back to you were mentioning retail space. Is there a lot of vacant retail space in Boulder?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about
Y-
that.
Yeah, I mean I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face right now. And I think I I'm pretty sure the last statistic that I read was around 30%. Um, yeah, of office and retail spaces going
Well,
vacant
why
right
has
now.
that happened? I can understand office because everybody's working at home, but what is up with that? Why is there so much vacant retail space?
Well, yeah, Jan, well, let's get into it. That's a
Yeah, no,
complicated question. So, for starters, there's certain municipal codes that when you build something, you need to have ground floor retail. And we see that all over the place, right? Like where the liquor mart just was, ground floor over by Boulder Junction, all that's ground floor retail. And then say in the Northwestern Arts District. The idea behind that code is to create a walkable city, which isn't a bad idea. I think we all want to be able to we want people that aren't driving around. They want to get a coffee, they just walk downstairs.
right.
Right. So for starters, we saturated the market a lot, which wouldn't necessarily be bad, except for the fact that they're too expensive to actually do business there. Part of why it's too expensive is because of Boulder, and Boulder makes it very difficult to get a business permit in those places. If you want, like I said, if a use permit can tie you up for months, and then that's an overhead expense. But part of it is that the landowners are willing to leave the rent high because the loans that they were given to develop the actual land require a certain rental average between all of the units. So
But
there's like,
can they make their loans?
what?
Can they make their loans? Can they pay the loans?
Well, I mean, hopefully that they get through these loans and then the price of that space will come down. But
Mhm.
that's why a lot of the
How
landowners
do you
are
pay the loan? How do you pay the loan off if you're the builder and or the owner or the developer and nobody's renting your retail space? How do you end up
you
paying?
crank the rent on the units upstairs for the poor people who are you crank the rent on the units upstairs
Oh,
on an
really? Is
already
that
squeezed housing market. Yeah, it's a
did they
vicious
overbuild?
problem.
Did they do poor planning and overbuild when they decided to create these walkable spaces within the city?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. I think that there was some like progressive policy that was ultimately misguided. Like, over in Boulder Junction, I'm not entirely sure that that retail space would be necessary because you're already on top of a retail space, right? You're competing with the entire 28th Street Mall. Is nobody's like it's going to be a lot harder to run a corner grocery there when there's a Whole Foods and a King Supers 2 blocks away.
Right, right
Um,
next.
yeah, so there are some niche businesses that might be able to fill that space, but a lot of those are already within the region. Now, a place that you see it doing really well would be, North Boulder Arts, but they don't have a large commercial center right there to compete with. So
Mhm.
it's just like being slightly out of touch with the different neighborhoods and the values that exist within them.
So you had some. I read some of your comments about homeless people turning retail space into whatever. What are your thoughts on housing homeless and all of that?
Well, I mean, that's why I think all of this really ties together and why kind of an overhaul of land use would go so far. Because it's all so tangled up, like that we don't know where we can do what. But there's like there's many different tiers of homeless, right?
Mm.
And there's different problems. So I'm gonna start with just the one that I think everybody thinks of off the top of their head, which is kind of our chronically homeless, mentally ill people that have been in the city for a long time. So
And
there's
drug
and
addicts,
drug.
and
Yeah,
they're all
yeah. I would classify addiction into that mentally ill umbrella. Like I would consider addiction a type of mental illness, and within that, I don't think that we have adequate facilities to handle it. So there's some problems coming from the state. There's some problems coming from the county, like we don't have not a large enough jail. But even within our city, we don't have the resources.
they're building some kind of mental health rehab center at the jail right now. But Dan, of course, I mean, we have people camping all over the streets, have had forever, and I don't know where we're spending money. Rob Smoke says we're spending $4 million a year chasing homeless people around. Why can't we just have a nice facility for them and help them get some treatment, mental health treatment and drug addiction treatment?
So yeah, and I mean that's spot on. But we do have facilities. Obviously, we have the All Roads Shelter and we have the Bluebird Shelter, right? But these are housing first facilities, and that's been the national policy for some 15 years. And it's not necessarily even a bad policy because it's like the one thing more dangerous than a meth addict is a hungry meth addict, and that's kind of the that was kind of the
Well,
undertone at
the
the
thing is they don't have treatment. Like if you go to,
that's what I'm getting at. That's where I'm ultimately going, is that we only have wet shelters. And that's one of the things that I very much support, is that we need to have a dry shelter with treatment and then alternative sentencing to get them there.
absolutely. No, I love
Um,
it. You're exactly right. I mean, I've been banging that drum for 20 years and nobody seems to listen. The problem is Boulder is such a pro-drug town. I mean, it has been forever. We're the first ones to legalize marijuana. And it's just like, law enforcement in the city completely turned its back on major drug dealing for decades. So I think to talk about treating it or treating the homeless, it's like people just turn their back on it. I'm wondering what is wrong with these people.
well, I think that sometimes, like, I think that when we're living in Boulder, like, we're all progressive folks. Like, I'm a progressive guy, but it's when in our efforts to be progressive that we almost get in our own way and lose the plot.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like that's where things go wrong, because sometimes helping people also means being a little bit firm, right? And that ultimately helps everybody more. um
There is a
I don't think that police in jail is the only way to help people, a person suffering from schizophrenia. Like, I don't think that that's a long-term or humanitarian solution. But once we accept that, why don't we find an actual long-term humanitarian solution instead of letting that person just go wild downtown?
I mean, it's the age-old question, and if you get elected, maybe you can solve this problem because no, nobody seems to want to. What else? Anything else before we say goodbye?
Well, I mean, to bring it all the way back, it's like when we're looking at that development over on Alpine Balsam, like that's a massive civil project owned by the city. Okay, well, we spent all this money on demolition, right? And the idea was that we were going to recycle the steel, and I'm sure that they did a great job recycling the steel. And this is where that progressive vision gets lost. Because if we're going for some 5 times the market rate of demolition because we want it to be sustainable, we're all environmentalists here. We all love the environment. But in a way, isn't it also an environmental decision to just let that one slide, do it at a market rate, and then reinvest that money somewhere else to get the people off the streets? That way people feel safer biking. Like, that can be an environmental decision as well. And I think that I think as a city, we're kind of ready for a little bit more pragmaticism to meter our values.
Max Lord, thanks for being on the TV show today. Good luck
Yeah,
in your run. Do you have a website?
I do. It's maxlordforboulder.org.
Oh wow, maxlordforboulder.org, and it's right down here in the bottom. You can check in with them. Thanks so much for being
Yeah,
on.
and there's a contact link there, goes directly to my email, and I'm pretty good about getting back on it.